I still remember that night like a scar that will never heal, etched deep within me. The night my daughter cast me out like trash after she won the lottery ticket. The sound of her voice was enough to pierce me straight through the heart. "You'll never see a cent of my money, you bitter old woman." Those words sliced through the storm with more force than any lightning bolt. My hands trembled as I clutched my worn-out suitcase, the one I had packed only hours earlier, hoping, foolishly, that she would take me in for the night. I watched helplessly as the fragments of my life were washed into the mud. Behind her stood John, her new boyfriend, arms crossed and smirk fixed in place, enjoying the show. He looked barely older than my grandson, arrogant, empty, and proud to witness my humiliation. I could see it in his eyes. He felt powerful standing beside her, beside the woman he thought was untouchable now. I stood there, drenched and shivering, not from vanity but from the sheer weight of betrayal. Lydia's voice rose again, louder, sharper, crueler. She called me a leech, a parasite, a burden. She shouted that I was trying to feed off her success, that she'd worked for everything she had. She never once looked at me as her mother, only as someone to despise. That night, under the roaring storm and the cold light of her mansion, my daughter, my only child, threw me out of her life. I had built everything for her, and now I stood outside, uninvited, unwanted, but not defeated. Because buried beneath the betrayal was something she had overlooked, a secret that would change everything and make her regret. Before we continue with the story, comment where you are watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get more uplifting stories about women that have been betrayed and mistreated by family members but still got back on their feet with a happy ending. Just 8 days before that dreadful night, everything between Lydia and me still seemed normal, or at least I convinced myself it was. We had our Sunday ritual, one of the few things that still connected us. A quiet morning at the corner cafe, 2 cups of coffee, mine always black, hers with too much cream, and a few lottery tickets we'd buy on our way out. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the hope we shared, those soft moments of laughter and dreaming together, imagining what life might look like if luck finally smiled on us. "If I win, Mom," she would always say, her eyes lighting up, "I'll take care of you. I promise." She said it every week, and every week I believed her. I wanted to. I had been there through every struggle, when she couldn't pay her rent, when her relationships fell apart, when she came home crying because she couldn't find a steady job. I kept her household running, looked after her children, and stretched my small pension just to help her keep the lights on. I thought our bond was unbreakable, something sacred between mother and daughter. Then came that Thursday, the day that changed everything. The news reported a winning ticket had been sold at our usual gas station. I remember the exact moment the reporter said it. My heart skipped. Lydia was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, and she looked up at me, a strange flicker passing over her face. "You ever buy from there this week?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "Just like always." She only nodded and went back to her phone, but I could sense something brewing behind her quiet stare. Later that night, the ticket I had pinned to the fridge, the one with the numbers I'd carefully picked myself, was gone. I searched everywhere. The counter, my purse, even the trash bin, but it had vanished without a trace. My heart sank, but I told myself maybe Lydia had moved it. I wanted to believe that more than anything. 3 days later, she came storming into my kitchen, her face flushed with excitement, her hands clutching a giant ceremonial check. 20 million, Mom," she screamed. "Can you believe it? I actually won." Her laughter filled the room, but it didn't reach me. My hands trembled as I held onto the counter for support. I forced a smile, but my chest felt tight, heavy. Deep down, I knew the truth before she ever said another word. The ticket she was celebrating, the one that changed her life, was mine. I could feel the betrayal like a slow, spreading burn beneath my skin. In that moment, something inside me broke. Not from jealousy, not even from the loss of money, but from the realization that the daughter I had loved and raised could steal from me without hesitation, without shame, and still call it victory. Within just a few days of her so-called big win, Lydia was gone. No warning. No note. Not even a goodbye. One morning, I woke up to the sound of silence. No coffee brewing, no footsteps down the hallway, no humming from the kitchen where she usually scrolled through her phone. Her room was stripped bare. The drawers were empty, the bed made too neatly, as if she'd planned her exit well in advance. All that remained in the house were echoes and that single ridiculous yellow smiley face magnet stuck to my fridge. It mocked me every time I passed by. Its painted grin looked twisted in the dim light, a cheap reminder of the person my daughter had become. I used to glance at that magnet while preparing breakfast for her children, back when laughter filled the kitchen and she'd sneak a bite of toast before rushing out to work. Now it was the only trace she left behind. Bright, hollow, and cruelly cheerful, staring at me as if amused by my pain. Days turned into weeks, and though I tried to push the hurt aside, I couldn't escape it. Every time I turned on my phone, there she was, smiling beside John, posing with champagne glasses raised high, flaunting designer handbags and glittering jewelry. The captions read like bragging rights. Hard work pays off. New beginnings. Grateful for life's blessings. Her followers filled the comments with heart emojis and praise, calling her inspiring and lucky. None of them knew the truth. None of them saw the mother she had abandoned. Each picture cut deeper than the last. I saw her standing in front of a mansion, one that looked far too grand for someone who used to borrow money just to pay rent. John stood proudly beside her, his arm around her waist, wearing that same self-satisfied smirk I'd seen the night she threw me out. They looked like a power couple in every photo, as though wealth had wiped away every trace of the woman she once was, every sacrifice I had made for her. What hurt the most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the way she erased me. No mention of her mother. No gratitude. No acknowledgement that the foundation of her comfort had been built on my quiet endurance. It was as though I had died. As though I'd never existed at all. But what Lydia didn't know was that beneath her glittering lies, one truth still stood, a truth she had overlooked in her rush to celebrate. That winning ticket, the one she flaunted to the world, wasn't hers. The handwriting on that tiny white slip of paper was mine. Name, my purchase, my right. And though she had stripped me of everything else, she could never erase that single powerful fact. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even cry. Instead, I did what I've always done best. Stay calm and pay attention. For most of my life, patience had been my quiet armor. It got me through years of raising Lydia on my own, through hardship, through heartbreak. So when she stole from me, when she looked me in the eye and lied without hesitation, I didn't let anger take over. I let silence do the work instead. In the stillness of my small kitchen, I began to plan. Every morning, I'd sit at the table with a notepad, a cup of black coffee, and the determination to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I went back through my purse, sifting through old receipts, searching for the one from the gas station where I'd bought that winning ticket. When I finally found it, folded neatly between grocery lists and pharmacy slips, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was proof. Next, I visited the gas station itself. The same old neon sign flickered above the door, and the familiar smell of gasoline and coffee hit me the moment I stepped in. The clerk, a kind young man named Ben, looked up and smiled. He'd seen me countless times before. Lydia and I had bought tickets there every week for months. When I explained my situation, his eyes widened with disbelief. "I remember you," he said firmly. "You were here that day. You used cash. You even joked about your lucky numbers." Hearing that felt like a small piece of my dignity being restored. He pulled up the surveillance footage without hesitation. Together, we watched as the black and white recording played on the tiny monitor behind the counter. There I was, hair tied back, same sweater I'd worn to the cafe that morning, handing over a small bill and picking up a ticket. The timestamp matched the receipt exactly. I took photos of the screen, asked for a copy of the footage, and thanked him. That night, as rain tapped softly against the window, I laid everything out on my kitchen table. The receipt, the photos, the timestamp, the footage still on a USB stick. One by one, I labeled each piece of evidence with sticky notes, my hand steady, my heart focused. I wasn't building a case out of spite. I was building it out of truth. Lydia might have taken my ticket, but she couldn't take the facts. Still, I knew I needed more than proof. I needed someone who could help me fight this legally. That's when I found Carla Morris. Her name came from a recommendation by a neighbor who had seen a similar case years back. When I first met Carla in her office, a modest space filled with files and law books, I half expected her to dismiss me like everyone else had. But she didn't. She listened. She asked questions. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Evelyn, we can win this." Something in her confidence reignited a spark in me I thought I'd lost. Together, we reviewed everything I'd gathered. She made copies, organized documents, and took my statement down to the last detail. She even reached out to the Lottery Commission directly to alert them of the dispute. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in panic. When the lottery office responded, they didn't brush it aside. They launched a full investigation. They verified my documents, reviewed the footage, and interviewed the clerk. Each step brought me closer to the truth being recognized. Carla worked tirelessly, filing motions, sending letters, and keeping me updated with quiet determination. And then one afternoon she called me. I still remember the tremor in her voice. Not of fear, but of satisfaction. "They've frozen the payout," she said. "Lydia won't be able to access a cent until the case is settled." For a long moment I just stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, unable to speak. The air around me felt lighter, almost freeing. It wasn't joy I felt. It was relief, the kind that seeps into your bones after holding yourself together for too long. Lydia had built her new empire on a lie. She was out there, smiling for cameras, clinking glasses with John, while her entire fortune teetered on the edge of collapse, and she didn't even know it yet. I didn't need to shout or curse. I didn't need revenge. The truth was already doing its work quietly, just as I had done mine. While I worked quietly behind the scenes, Lydia was louder than ever. Every day she posted something new on social media. A new car, a new designer outfit, a new luxury trip with John. My phone buzzed with updates I didn't ask for but couldn't avoid. She had become addicted to showing off, and every glittering photo only reminded me how far she had drifted from the daughter I once knew. There she was, draped in silk dresses, posing beside champagne towers, captioning her photos with phrases like "hard work pays off" and "living my dream." I watched, not with envy, but with a kind of still sorrow. Each post was another brick in the wall she built between us, another piece of evidence of the arrogance that had consumed her. She had no idea that her own pride was tightening the noose she'd woven with her lies. Every caption, every date-stamped post, every image of her flaunting her fortune was quietly being documented, collected, and added to the growing pile of evidence that Carla and I had built. Her carelessness amazed me. She seemed invincible, as if money had made her untouchable. But greed has a way of blinding people. I kept my silence, waiting, letting the truth do what it always does, rise slowly, steadily, until it becomes undeniable. Then one morning the unraveling began. I remember it clearly because it was a Tuesday, and I was sipping my coffee when my phone buzzed with a message from Carla. "It's happening." At first I didn't know what she meant. But later that day, the storm began for Lydia. Her credit card started declining. First at a boutique, then at a restaurant, and later even at a gas station. One by one, her accounts were frozen. Her phone began to light up with calls from frantic accountants and lawyers. She tried to move her funds, but the system had already locked her out. The empire she had built on stolen ground was crumbling beneath her feet. The following night my phone rang. For a long moment, I just stared at the caller ID glowing on the screen, her name. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from a strange calm I hadn't felt in months. Picked up. "What did you do, Mom?" Lydia's voice exploded through the receiver. There was no trace of the confidence she once wore like armor. It cracked and wavered, laced with panic. "They froze my accounts. I can't access my money. What did you do?" I let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. "I told the truth," I said quietly. "The ticket you stole was mine. It had my name, my purchase, my proof." There was nothing but breathing on the other end. Heavy, uneven breathing, the kind that comes when a person realizes the world they've built is about to collapse. I could almost hear her pride shattering in that silence. No yelling, no denial, just the quiet acceptance of defeat. When she finally hung up, I sat still for a long while, staring at the wall. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a deep, cleansing peace. The truth had spoken for me. A few days later, the news spread everywhere. The State Lottery Commission publicly confirmed my ownership of the winning ticket. My name, Evelyn Shaw, was printed across headlines and broadcast on the evening news. My evidence had been verified, my claim upheld. Lydia's world collapsed overnight. Her mansion, once a symbol of her arrogance, was seized to cover the investigation and legal costs. Her accounts were emptied, frozen in the wake of her deception. The friends who had clung to her wealth vanished without a trace. Even John, the man who had once stood proudly at her side, walked away when there was nothing left to gain. I didn't gloat and I didn't celebrate. I simply stood by the window, watching the evening light fade across the sky, and whispered to myself, "Justice doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with silence." And in that silence, I finally breathed again, free, steady, and whole. When the press conference aired on television, confirming that I was the rightful owner of the winning ticket, I didn't jump up in joy or weep in relief. I just sat there in my small kitchen, hands folded on the table, watching the screen flicker in the soft glow of evening. The reporters' voices blended into a dull hum as they repeated my name, Evelyn Shaw, again and again, declaring that justice had been served. Should have felt like victory. But what I felt instead was stillness. Deep, steady, and quiet, like the calm that follows a long storm. When I reached forward and turned off the television, the silence that filled the room felt sacred. My eyes wandered to the refrigerator, that same old chipped thing I'd owned for years. There it stood, humming softly, unchanged. And there, faintly visible under the kitchen light, was the mark where the smiley face magnet had once clung, the same place where that lottery ticket had hung before everything spiraled. That little patch of metal had witnessed it all. Hope, betrayal, and now vindication. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The world seemed to breathe again. The pavement glistened, the air smelled clean, and a cool breeze slipped through the half-open window, brushing against my face like a quiet reassurance. I leaned back in my chair and let the peace of that moment settle into my bones. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light. Not because I had money, but because the truth had found its way home. I thought about Lydia and the words she had thrown at me like knives. Leech, burden, parasite. I remembered how those words had once pierced my heart, leaving invisible wounds I carried silently. But now, looking back, they no longer held power. She had been wrong. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't weak. I was a mother who had stood through storms, who had sacrificed without complaint, who had been wronged and yet refused to let hate consume her. The truth had been my weapon, and patience had been my shield. And together, they had spoken louder than any defense I could have made. I rose slowly from the chair and reached for my old suitcase, the same one that had once fallen open on Lydia's driveway, spilling my life onto wet concrete. It still bore the stains of that night, faint but visible, like scars that refused to fade. I zipped it shut, this time not with despair, but with quiet strength. The weight inside felt different now, lighter somehow, filled not with shame or loss, but with dignity. As I stood there, a small smile formed on my lips. It wasn't the smile of triumph, nor of pride. It was peace. The kind that comes when you've been through the worst and finally found yourself again. I had lost a daughter to greed, but in the ashes of that loss, I had rediscovered something far greater, myself. And that, I realized as I turned off the last light and stepped toward the door, was worth more than any $20 million could ever buy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get more uplifting stories about women that have been betrayed and mistreated by family members but still got back on their feet with a happy ending.